Chapter 7. Taylor Farm, 2035.
Luke sat at the kitchen table, his uniform wrinkled from the day's intensity, elbows digging into the weathered wood. Outside, Alabama's twilight dissolved into darkness, cricket songs masking the electric tension inside. Across from him, Thomas gripped a mug of black coffee like a lifeline, his spine rigid with unspoken tension. Lisa's arms were crossed defensively, while Caroline mechanically dried dishes, her movements betraying her inner turmoil. Daniel went to his trailer to rest. The events of the past 2 days had taken a lot out of the young man. This gave Luke a chance to talk with the rest of the family, and there was only one subject anyone was interested in. What Daniel did today wasn't just strategy, Luke said, his voice a low, raw whisper. It was like watching a maestro conduct an impossible symphony. He didn't just see the battle, he orchestrated it. He leaned forward, eyes locked on his father. Dad, if we give him a chance, he could revolutionize warfare. Save thousands, perhaps millions of lives one day. Maybe change everything. The silence that followed was a living thing, laden with unspoken calculations and desperate hopes. Each family member carried a different vision of Daniel's potential. A weapon, a shield, a prodigy, a sacrifice. Luke's hands trembled slightly. Admiral Jackson has a plan. He wants me to lead the next phase. They're talking full command, top-tier integration with Allied forces. If it works, I'd be the youngest general in the history of the armed forces. But none of it happens without Daniel. He let the words hang. Daniel would have to stay in a civilian role. No public credit. No honors. Just shadow work. And after what happened today, after how the Joint Chiefs treated him, I don't think he'll say yes. Thomas set his mug down with a heavy thud. Then you don't ask him. It's not that simple, Dad. I wasn't exaggerating. How many sleepless nights did Mom sit up and wonder about you if you were ever coming home? How many times have I done that to Lisa? What about the spouses who weren't so lucky? The ones that only got a flag in return instead of a husband or a wife? We can change that, not for all of them, but for more than a few. Thomas looked at his son, a familiar exasperation warring with grudging respect. And you think Daniel's going to sign up for that life? The one where he does all the work and someone else gets the medals? Lisa's voice was quieter but no less cutting. And it's not just about Luke. It's about Libby, about our family. Daniel could build something that protects her future, that gives her a world worth growing up in. I know it's not fair to ask him, but it's not fair not to. Thomas gave her a long, unreadable look. So we trade his peace for ours, his silence for your daughter's safety. That what we're doing? Luke looked away. The weight of it all pressed down. Ambition, family, fear, love, all tangled in a choice no one wanted to make out loud. And still, behind the bedroom door, Daniel slept. Luke's gaze drifted to that door, then back to his father, the unspoken question hanging heavy in the humid Alabama air. What kind of man would Daniel become if they asked him to carry this burden alone? Luke finally spoke again, his voice quieter now, almost resigned. Admiral Jackson's coming back to the farm next week. He's going to make it official, an offer for both of us. But it's a package deal. That landed harder than anything else. Caroline stopped mid-motion, the towel in her hand forgotten. You're saying, if Daniel says no, they pull the offer from you? Luke nodded. I can't do what Daniel does, Mom? No one can. They don't trust civilian analysts on their own. They want him locked in, monitored, and they want the whole thing under military optics, with me out front, and Daniel in the shadows. He looked up at his mother. If he says no, this all goes away. All of it. Caroline's eyes grew wide with worry. So if he says no, then you stay in the Air Force? You still get deployed? Luke tried to calm his mother with his tone. Yes, that is true. But thanks to Daniel, Tracy and I have both gotten promotions. I'm a full colonel now. The deployment duties should be a lot less frequent now and not as high risk for me personally. Lisa followed Caroline's logic. But if Daniel says yes, that is all over. You are here with Libby for dinner every night. Luke sighed. Yes, but I won't put that on Daniel. If he does it only to keep me safe and I end up getting the credit for all of his work, he will hate me for it one day. How could he not? Thomas nodded in agreement. Lisa didn't blink. Okay, so it won't be about you, but I have 1 week to make him see why he should do this. Caroline nodded in agreement. Thomas leaned back slowly in his chair, staring at the two women. You don't even hear yourselves. But they did, and they didn't care, because they'd already made their decision.
Admiral Jackson returns 1 week later.
The black government SUV rolled up the gravel drive just after noon, sunlight glinting off the windshield like a signal flare. Admiral Jackson stepped out first, crisp in his uniform despite the summer heat, every motion purposeful. Tracy emerged behind him in civilian clothes, eyes scanning the porch with quiet anticipation. They came bearing warmth, respect, and something heavier, intention. Jackson smiled as he climbed the steps, extending a hand toward Daniel like they were old friends. Thank you for seeing us, Daniel, he said, voice rich with admiration. Half of Washington's still trying to figure out how a kid from Alabama rewrote their playbook in real time. Admiral Jackson turned to the others as they stepped out onto the porch, Luke already standing at attention despite being off duty, Lisa offering a cautious smile, and Caroline and Thomas lingering in the doorway. Ma'am, sir, Jackson said, nodding respectfully to the elder Taylors. Thank you for having us. Tracy gave Lisa a quick hug, then shook Thomas's hand firmly. Luke stepped forward. Admiral, I am sure you remember my father, Thomas Taylor. I'm actually third-generation Air Force. He served in Desert Storm, 82nd Airborne. Jackson's eyes lit with professional recognition. That explains the posture. Good to see you, Mr. Taylor. Thank you for your service. Thomas gave a curt nod, his face unreadable. Same to you, Admiral. Admiral Jackson turned back to Daniel, his expression shifting from cordial to reverent. I've read your scores 6 times now, he said, pacing slowly across the porch, addressing the whole family. Cognitive recursion, pattern projection, neural adaptability, off the charts. But it's not just numbers, it's instinct. You don't just react to variables, son, you see through them. He paused, looking to Thomas and Caroline. In 35 years of service, I've encountered geniuses, prodigies, savants. But I've never seen anything like your boy. And frankly, I'm not sure anyone ever has. He looked straight at Daniel. If we're going to win the wars of the next century without losing a generation to blood and ash, it might be because of you. Admiral Jackson stepped off the porch and stood facing the family, hands clasped behind his back, his voice turning sharp and deliberate. What I'm about to say isn't public yet, but it soon will be. The Army and Navy are both making their move. They want jurisdiction over orbital defense, completely. Their argument is simple. They have the history, the infrastructure, and the manpower. They're lobbying hard to fold Space Force back into their chains of command. And I won't lie to you, the president was close to signing off. The previous Space Force brass left a mess. No leadership, no vision. He turned slightly, eyes flicking between Thomas and Caroline. But then something happened that nobody expected. Your son walked into the Pentagon and changed the calculus. His simulation wasn't just a victory. It was a revelation. The president was present for parts of it, but she got the full briefing the same night. When she saw the telemetry and the after-action breakdown, she paused everything. She's now ordered each military branch to submit a new doctrinal vision, starting with orbital defense of the planet. Full-scale, future-oriented, no budget cap. She and the Senate Oversight Committee will choose one. And whichever branch wins, he took a breath, will control orbital command, permanently. That means satellites, kinetic platforms, intercept grids, deep space surveillance, and all atmospheric defense systems. In plain English, it means whoever owns the sky owns the future. That branch becomes the lead branch of the United States military. Not symbolically, structurally. Strategic funding, operational command, policy influence. It becomes the spine of American defense for the next 100 years. Jackson let that sink in. He looked at Daniel, then at Luke. then back to the parents. This isn't just a new mission. It's a battle for the soul of the military, and your family is at the center of it. Luke leaned forward, resting his arms on his knees, his voice steady but edged with the tension that had been building since Jackson arrived. So if the president picks your doctrine, you're next in line to lead the Joint Chiefs, right? Jackson gave a single, weighty nod. That's the path, yes, and of course. He glanced at Tracy, then turned his eyes to Luke, his meaning unmistakable. Where I go, my senior staff goes. The people who help shape this vision will be the ones to execute it. His tone held no pretense. It was a promise. Caroline's breath hitched, and Lisa's grip tightened on her coffee mug. Neither of them said anything, but both could already see it. No more deployments, no more combat tours. A general's life for Luke. Stability, power, legacy. Then Thomas leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, brow furrowed with something deeper than skepticism. Okay, he said slowly. We get it. Luke could follow in your footsteps. Maybe lead the Joint Chiefs one day. Maybe retire and become Secretary of Defense. Hell, maybe president. He stared at the Admiral, his voice suddenly sharp. But what about Daniel? What happens to the man in the shadows? Because shadows don't get clear paths, do they? Admiral Jackson's face shifted, just slightly, as Thomas's words hit home. He straightened his posture, drawing in a breath like a man preparing to cross a battlefield with no cover. Mr. Taylor, he said carefully, you're not wrong. Shadows don't get parades. They don't get medals. They don't get legacies, not the way the public understands them. But they do get power. Real power. The kind that saves lives without anyone knowing who to thank. He turned toward Daniel now, tone gentler. You'd be officially listed as support staff, part of General Taylor's planning team. A civilian advisor, quietly embedded. There may even be rumors. Quiet ones. About how you only got the job because you're his brother. About how it's the best a high school dropout could do. Jackson didn't flinch. It's not fair. It's brutal. But it's the cost of making this real. The country and Congress won't accept a planetary defense doctrine drafted by someone without a uniform or a diploma, even if you're the only person alive who could have written it. Daniel's jaw clenched, and beside him Thomas pushed back from the table with a sharp exhale, standing now, hands on his hips, eyes burning. So you want my son to save the world, and then sit in the back of the room while they hand the damn medal to someone else? I want your son to help save the world, Jackson shot back, no apology in his voice. And I want to give him the tools to do it. Daniel stood, the weight of the moment pressing against him like gravity. He didn't speak, but the silence said enough. Lisa broke it first. Daniel, please, just hear him out. Caroline's voice followed, colder, more commanding. This isn't about your pride. This is about us, all of us. We don't get another shot at this. Her eyes flicked to Luke. He doesn't get another shot. Daniel didn't move. Jackson waited. Luke sat frozen, the words caught in his throat like glass. He knew if he spoke, if he pushed, Daniel would hear only ambition, only self-interest. So he said nothing. He stared at the floor, jaw tight, chest hollow. But Tracy couldn't stay quiet. She stepped forward, her voice low but unwavering. I hate this, she said, eyes locked on Daniel's. I hate that this is the deal on the table. I hate that my dad had to come here and sell you on swallowing this garbage. But he tried every other way first. This was the last resort. She took a breath and squared her shoulders. So here's what I'm offering. If you say yes, I'll go to D.C. full-time. I'll be your liaison, your buffer, your handler, your pain in the ass, whatever you need. When the press or the politicians show up, sure, I'll wear the Space Force badge and stand behind Luke. But the rest of the time, I work for you. Office setup, files, coffee runs, dry cleaning, late-night pizza, unlimited fruit cups. You won't be alone. Daniel laughed at Tracy. As if I own anything that needs to be dry cleaned. She gave him a half smile in return. I'll still do it. And I'll make sure your fruit cups are more than just sugar and disappointment. We do this together, Danny. Whatever it takes. Daniel looked at her, really looked at her, seeing not just the scarred warrior but the loyal friend, and a flicker of the old spark ignited in his eyes. Tracy turned to Caroline and Thomas, her voice steady. I know Luke won't be able to be with him every day. Not if this really works. But I can. And I will. Taking care of Daniel will be my top priority. Not because it's my job, because it's him. Then she faced Daniel again, her eyes softer now. It sucks that you won't get the credit. It's wrong, and it makes me want to throw chairs. But you'd still get to do it, to shape the future, to protect people. I'll know. My dad will know. Even the president will know. She just won't be able to say it. A long pause, a breath. But it's me and you again, she said quietly, just like the rehab hospital. I believe in you, Daniel, and I know we can do anything together. I am not asking you to do this because it might save the world one day. I'm not asking you to do this for your family. No, I'm going to be selfish. I'm going to ask you to do it because I wouldn't want to do this with anyone else. You are the one that got me to put this uniform back on. Please see it through with me. Daniel looked at Tracy. He saw the plea in her eyes, the genuine need for his presence. He saw the echoes of their shared ordeal, the quiet strength she'd found within herself, a strength he'd helped ignite. Then he looked at his family, at Luke's hopeful gaze, Lisa's tear-filled eyes, Caroline's weary acceptance, and Thomas's stoic silence. He was a strategist, a builder of plans, a solver of impossible equations. This wasn't a problem to be solved. It was a life to be lived, a future to be shaped. He could build a better world, not from the shadows, but from the light of his own making, with Tracy by his side. He saw the truth then, not just in Jackson's words, but in Tracy's eyes. He would do it. For them. For himself. Daniel looked at Tracy, then at his family. The decision, it seemed, was already made. Now it was time for Admiral Jackson to see exactly what he was helping to create. Daniel didn't blink, didn't flinch. His eyes locked on the Admiral's with unnerving calm. You made 3 critical mistakes, he said, his voice steady, surgical. First, you came here thinking you were in a position of strength, that you could leverage my family against me by fast-tracking my brother's career and getting him out of active duty deployments. But we both know you're going to do that anyway. You can't risk Luke dying overseas. Because if he does, I'll spend the rest of my life making sure every senator and general knows whose fault it was. Caroline gasped, her dish towel falling limp in her hands. Daniel, how could you? Thomas waved his hand. Let the boy speak. We've all had our say. Now it's time he has his. Besides, I think I am going to enjoy this. Thomas chuckled low and dark. The sound of a man watching a predator stretch its jaws for the first time. Daniel stepped forward. Your second mistake was letting me see how important this is to you, that you have no viable alternatives. This is your Hail Mary. You're all in. You don't have another Daniel Taylor in your back pocket. He leaned forward now, just enough to shift the gravity of the room. And your third mistake. A thin, dangerous smile touched the edge of his mouth. Was actually the first one you made. You let me see how good I am at this. The room was dead quiet. No one breathed. So here's how this goes, Daniel continued. I pick my own team, civilian and military. That includes Tracy. My salary will be $357,000 a year, the maximum allowed for a civilian contractor without congressional approval. I will not sign an NDA. If I ever walk, I take everything in my head that isn't classified with me. You'll still have Luke, you'll still have the PR team, but you won't have the future. Luke bolted upright, his voice cracking. You can't do this, Daniel. This is extortion. Daniel turned to him, ice in his stare. No, this is me looking out for myself, since the only career Mom and Lisa seem interested in protecting is yours. Lisa looked like she'd been slapped. Daniel, that's not... He didn't even look at her. Then Daniel turned back to the Admiral, jaw set. "And just so we're clear, if you don't accept my terms, I'll be on the first flight to Hong Kong the day I turn 18. I've already started getting correspondence from the PRC. "Damn it, Daniel, seriously. China!" Luke barked. "You can't do this." But before anyone else could speak, Thomas let out a low whistle and shook his head in disbelief, a crooked grin spreading across his face. "Well, I'll be damned. Admiral, you were right. I didn't see it until right now. But my boy? He's a great white shark. And you? You're dinner." Admiral Jackson stared at Daniel for a long moment, jaw tight, gears turning behind his eyes. Then he looked at Tracy. She didn't say a word. She just raised an eyebrow. The Admiral sighed, and then he laughed. "All right," he said, shaking his head in defeat and admiration. "Okay, Daniel, you've got a deal." Handshakes and hugs spread across the room. Tracy embraced Daniel. She could tell that this was not what he wanted, that he felt that in the end he had no choice. She knew that in a way that was true, but at least he had done it on his own terms. Luke stood stiffly by the window, arms crossed, jaw clenched, watching the evening shadows stretch across the fields. He hadn't said a word since Daniel's terms were accepted. Admiral Jackson noticed. The silence between the brothers was palpable, friction that, if left unchecked, could crack the foundation of what they were about to build. "Before I go," the Admiral said firmly, "you two need to clear the air. Whatever this is, resentment, pride, fear, you deal with it now. Because going forward, this only works if you're united." Luke didn't move. Admiral Jackson continued. "Luke, despite the public narrative, your primary role is to support Daniel. You're the bridge between his mind and the military machine we're trying to overhaul. You'll ensure he has access to every asset, protocol, and operational playbook Space Force and the Air Force have. Your job is to teach him how we think, how we fight, and how our systems can be adapted into a doctrine the President will actually approve." He turned to Tracy. "Same goes for you, with the Navy, and with Washington. You understand the game. Politics, chain of command, committee dynamics. You'll be his interface, his translator, his shield." Tracy gave a wide, glowing grin. "You got it, Admiral. I'll be his firewall." Then she looked at Daniel, eyes sparking. "But we're going to need someone to handle the other branches. Army, Marines, Intel Services. That's a hell of a blind spot." Daniel didn't hesitate. "That's what the rest of my team is for." Tracy blinked. "You mean—" Daniel nodded. "I want Gunnery Sergeant Matthew Reyes, Marine Corps retired, and Julie Lawrence, Army Ranger, also retired." Admiral Jackson gave Daniel a curious look, but Tracy's eyes lit up. "That's brilliant. Dad, they were in the hospital with us. They know Daniel and he knows them. No egos, no salutes, just loyalty, and they'll follow him anywhere." Daniel looked at his brother for the first time in several minutes. "That work for you, General?" Luke hesitated, his jaw twitching. Then he exhaled and gave a short, stiff nod. "Yeah, it works." Admiral Jackson looked between them one last time, satisfied. "Good, because the world just changed, and you two are going to have to change with it."
Back in the White House, 2040.
Libby asked a simple question. "Did they change? I mean, were they able to work it out?" Lisa's voice caught, the memory a sharp, bright shard in her heart. "They did, sweetie. For a while, at least. Daniel built his own unit, his own command. And Luke learned to trust him." Lisa paused, her gaze drifting to the darkened sky visible through the window. But the foundation of that trust was built on a lie he couldn't escape, a lie that ultimately broke them both. Lisa continued. "But in the short term, things went smoothly. Daniel re-engaged with the members of his old unit. He got all the insight he needed about the operational capabilities of the Marines and the Army from his new team members. Tracy told him everything he needed to know about the Navy and Space Force. And of course, Daniel leaned on Luke heavily for information about how the Air Force fought. After about 2 months, a plan finally started to form in Daniel's mind. But of course, Luke didn't love it. Lisa's voice lowered, colored with a mixture of pride and regret. After about 2 months, something started to crystallize in Daniel's mind. It wasn't just abstract theory anymore. It was a shape, a doctrine, a system. A new way of fighting, of surviving, of winning. And like everything he did, it wasn't conventional. She closed her eyes a moment before continuing. Daniel didn't just plan for orbital defense. He rewrote the entire playbook. He abandoned the idea of fighting for space in space. He told Luke, bluntly, that the Air Force would lose any direct engagement in orbit. The enemy would control the skies. Daniel said we should let them. Libby's eyes widened. Let them? Lisa nodded. That was the first time I saw the old Daniel again. The 10-year-old who beat chess programs by losing every pawn on purpose. He told Luke, if they take orbit, then we take Earth. We lure them down, force them to land, and then we bury them in our dirt. She looked down, twisting her wedding ring unconsciously. Luke didn't take it well. The Air Force lives in the sky. For him, that doctrine wasn't just wrong, it was heresy. He felt like Daniel was throwing away everything he believed in, everything he fought for. And maybe, in a way, he was. She paused, but Daniel didn't care.
Back on the Taylor farm, 2035.
Late night, 2 months into doctrine planning. The overhead screen glowed with orbital diagrams, enemy projections, and Earth's atmospheric layers. Daniel sat cross-legged on the floor, barefoot, tapping a stylus against the hollow metal leg of his workstation. Luke stood, arms crossed, flanked by half-empty coffee cups and a rapidly fading sense of comfort. You want to let them land? Luke said, voice low, incredulous. Daniel didn't even look up. Yes. You're out of your goddamn mind. No, Daniel said, calm as water. I'm accepting reality. He stood slowly and walked to the whiteboard, where orbital trajectories and fleet silhouettes cluttered the margins. Luke, we are not fighting a rogue satellite or a Chinese balloon. These are beings who've crossed the stars. They bend light, gravity, maybe even time. You think we're going to win this with a better flight pattern? Luke shook his head. You're talking about conceding orbit. That's surrender. No, Daniel snapped. It's bait. He grabbed a marker and drew a crude Earth. We can't outfly them, can't outgun them. And this isn't a Will Smith movie. We're not uploading a computer virus into a ship powered by physics we haven't even discovered. We're ants in a space war. He circled the Earth. But down here, we have terrain, weather, resistance networks, deep caves, dense cities. We know every inch of this planet, and we bleed for it. Luke clenched his jaw, silent. Daniel's voice softened. I know what I'm doing, Luke. I understand this document may one day send men and women into hell. He turned toward his brother. And every time I write a new page, I picture you and Tracy following it. Luke's eyes flicked away. His throat tightened. I don't want one single death on my hands, Daniel said, least of all yours. But I understand that might not be possible. So if my plan requires you to die, I want to be damn sure it means something. Thomas stood near the back, arms folded, silent. Admiral Jackson had arranged clearance. He said it was symbolic, but in reality, he knew that someone might need to referee the bouts between Daniel and Luke. The old soldier didn't speak, just watched both his boys with a quiet, mounting awe. Luke exhaled. All right, he muttered, almost to himself. Say we do it. We give up orbit. Then what? They've got God-tier weapons? Won't they just bomb us back into the Stone Age from space? Daniel's mouth curled into a slow, wicked smile. No, he said, stepping back toward his hollow board. That's where things get fun. Daniel tapped a few keys, and the holographic map of Earth began to shimmer, overlaying a soft, pulsing grid that wrapped the planet in a translucent shell. This, he said, is the dispersion field. Luke frowned, stepping closer. A shield? Daniel shook his head. Not exactly. It's not meant to stop their weapons, it's meant to blind them. Atmospheric refraction, synthetic EM noise, pulse decoys. Once it's live, they won't be able to distinguish a cornfield from a command post. No satellite lock, no recon. From orbit, the entire planet goes dark. Luke stared at the simulation, watching enemy sensor lines scatter and fail. His brow furrowed, then lifted. This is what forces them to land, he said slowly, realization dawning. If they want to finish the job, they have to come down, start a ground war. Daniel grinned. Exactly. That's where you guys get to do all your hero shit. Tanks, fighters, naval strikes, close quarters, subs under the ice caps, drones in the jungle. We bring every conventional asset we've ever built, on our terms. They'll have tech we can't match, but they won't have a damn clue where to point it. Luke chuckled despite himself. You want to turn Earth into a trap. Daniel leaned back, folding his arms. I want to turn it into a nightmare, one they can't leave fast enough. Thomas let out a low whistle behind them. Now that's my boy. Luke nodded slowly, the resistance in his eyes fading. All right, let's make it a nightmare.